The world knew Sammy Davis Jr. as the brightest star in Las Vegas, but in November 1960, when he announced he was going to marry a white Swedish woman, that star almost went out. May Britt was not just a beautiful actress. In the reality of America at that time, their love was forbidden, and it nearly cost Sammy his life. On the morning of their wedding day, a brown package arrived at his Los Angeles home. It wasn't a bomb, but it was a warning, and the sender was one of the most powerful names in Hollywood. As Sammy opened that package, his hands trembled because the letter inside was not just a threat, but an announcement of his future's cancellation. His invitation to John F. Kennedy's presidential inauguration ceremony had been revoked, and the reason was simple. If a black man married a white woman, the doors of the White House were closed to him. In the autumn of 1959, Sammy Davis Jr. was at the peak of his career. He received a standing ovation every night in the Copa Room. He was Frank Sinatra's right-hand man, and every door from Broadway to Hollywood was open to him. But there was an emptiness in his heart, the kind that spotlights couldn't fill. He was 34, he had conquered the world, but when he came home, there was no one there. When he met May Britt, a 29-year-old Swedish actress, that year Sammy felt something shift. May wasn't like the other Hollywood actresses. She came from Stockholm, knew about America's race problem from books, but hadn't lived it. And when she looked at Sammy, she only saw a man, not a color. Their first meeting was at a party at 20th Century Fox Studios, and Sammy wrote this in his diary that night: "Today I met the mother of my future." But the hope he saw in May's blue eyes would turn into a nightmare in the black and white reality of America. When their relationship began, the first warning came from May Britt's manager: "This relationship will kill your career." Hollywood in those years was overtly racist, and a white actress being seen with a black man meant the termination of studio contracts. May didn't listen. She was in love with Sammy, and for someone who grew up in Stockholm, this American madness made no sense. But reality soon knocked on the door. In the spring of 1960, when the couple went to a restaurant together, the waiter refused to give them a table. Sammy was famous, recognized, but because he was with May, he was deemed inappropriate. May cried on the way home that evening while Sammy drove silently. In that silence, he had made a decision. He would marry May, no matter the cost. The engagement news broke in July. The front page of the Los Angeles Times featured Sammy and May's photo, and the headline read, "Davis to marry Swedish actress. Interracial wedding shocks Hollywood." Phone lines were jammed. Sammy's manager, Cy Marsh, called in a panic. "The studios have blacklisted you. Your Vegas shows might be canceled." Frank Sinatra called, not to congratulate, but to warn. "Kiddo, do you know where this is going to end?" Even Dean Martin called, and his voice held concern. "Sammy, maybe wait a few years. Maybe the country will change." But Sammy was conflicted. May wasn't pregnant. They didn't need to rush. But he had a feeling. If they waited, maybe they would never marry. Maybe they would lose their courage. Maybe America would win. But the real shock came from another source. In August, John F. Kennedy's presidential campaign was in full swing. Kennedy was young, charismatic, and a symbol of change. Sammy had supported him, raised money for his campaign, and had been invited to the inauguration ceremony. The invitation was gold embossed and bore the White House seal. Sammy had hung it on the wall of his Beverly Hills home. However, after the news of his engagement to May Britt broke, a call came from the Kennedy campaign. It was Bobby Kennedy, the president's brother, and his voice was icy. "Sammy, you're causing problems for the campaign. We could lose the southern states. Maybe you should postpone the wedding." When Sammy hung up the phone, he held the invitation and had tears in his eyes. It was a request, not an order, but the message was clear. A black-white marriage was hurting Kennedy's presidency, and Sammy had to stop it. When May heard this, she asked with her Stockholm accent, "What are we going to do, Sammy?" Sammy didn't answer because he didn't know the answer. When Frank Sinatra sat down at the table at Villa Capri that night, he gave Sammy a whiskey and said, "The Kennedys used you, Sammy. You raised money, you won votes, now you're in excess, you don't need them." But Sammy needed the Kennedys because they were the hope for change, and if even they wouldn't accept an interracial marriage, who in America would? That night, Sammy made a decision. He would marry. If the Kennedys didn't want him, they were the losers, not Sammy. The invitation went in the trash and the wedding date was set, November 13th, but surviving until that date would be a struggle in itself. The threats began in September. The first letter came from the Hollywood post office. It was anonymous and it read, "Nigger, we will kill you if you marry the white woman." Sammy showed it to the police, but the officer shrugged. "Mr. Davis, unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about letters like this. Call us if there's an actual attack." The second threat came a week later, this time to May Britt's address. "Swedish whore, go back home or you will die." May didn't cry, but she was afraid, and for the first time she asked Sammy, "Maybe they're right, maybe this is too dangerous." Sammy held her hand and said, "May, if we give up now, they win. And I've accepted losing my whole life, but I will never accept losing you." At that moment, May Britt decided they would marry, no matter what anyone said. By October, the media was in a frenzy. Life magazine put the couple's photo on the cover, and the headline was "The Most Controversial Wedding of the Year." Time magazine put Sammy on the cover, but the questions in the interview were not about love, but about the race issue. "Mr. Davis, aren't you neglecting your responsibilities to the black community by marrying a white woman?" Sammy replied, "I am loving as a human being. The color of my skin was not my choice, but who my heart loves is my choice." But the black press wasn't happy either. Ebony magazine published a critical article, "Sammy Davis Jr. Are Black Women Not Enough?" Some voices from the NAACP rose up. "This is a betrayal. Sammy surrendered to the white system." Sammy was crushed when he heard this criticism because he had dedicated his life to fighting racism, and now he was being rejected by both whites and blacks because of his love. Frank Sinatra became Sammy's protector during those days. "You get married, Sammy, I'll be with you," he said, and he meant it. He attended the wedding planning meetings, took over security, and agreed to be the best man. But the other Rat Pack members were distant. Dean Martin made an excuse and said he wouldn't come. Peter Lawford remained silent due to his connections with the Kennedy family. Joey Bishop said he would come but was hesitant. Sammy was alone, and so was May. Her family in Sweden was in shock. Her mother called crying, "May, they're going to kill you in America. Please come home." But May didn't go. Love was above fear, or at least it had to be. On the morning of November 13th, 1960, a brown package arrived at Sammy's Beverly Hills home. It was labeled Federal Express, but there was no sender address. Sammy's assistant, Murphy Bennett, hesitated before opening the package. Bomb packages were rare that year, but known. They opened the package outside in the garden. There was no bomb inside, but there was a letter. The letter was on Democratic National Committee letterhead, and it had Bobby Kennedy's signature. The content was short but devastating. "Mr. Davis, your invitation to President-elect Kennedy's inauguration ceremony has been canceled. It is not a personal matter, but a political necessity. Thank you for your understanding." Sammy's knees shook when he read the letter. He turned to Murphy Bennett and said, "Murphy, I'm getting married today and the president-elect doesn't want me. What am I doing in this country?" Murphy couldn't answer because there was no answer. The wedding was to be in the afternoon at 7 in the evening. It was a small chapel at the Hotel Bel Air, and there were only 20 guests. Security was tight because the threats were real. The Los Angeles Police Department set up barricades around the hotel, and 2 Secret Service agents were waiting in May Britt's room. Sammy noticed his hands trembling as he put on his tuxedo. Frank Sinatra came up to him, put his hand on his shoulder, and whispered, "Kiddo, you're making history today. Be brave." Sammy smiled, but his smile was painful, because at that moment he realized this wedding was not just the union of 2 people. It was a rebellion, an act of protest, and the cost would be heavy. Outside the hotel, there were 500 protesters. White supremacist groups, Ku Klux Klan members, and ordinary people who were simply against interracial marriage. They held signs, "Keep America Pure," "No Mixed Marriage," "Davis Go Back to Harlem." They were shouting, cursing, threatening. Police barricades kept them under control, but their voices reached inside the chapel. May Britt heard those voices as she put on her wedding dress. For a woman raised in Stockholm, this was senseless. How can they hate so much? May's maid of honor tried to calm her down. "May, don't mind them. Today is your day." But May knew that today was not just her day, it was America's day, and America hated to lose. When the ceremony began, Rabbi William M. Kramer stood at the front of the chapel. Sammy had converted to Judaism, and the wedding was to be according to Jewish tradition. May Britt had also converted to Judaism for the ceremonies. The rabbi began his words, "Today 2 souls are united here, and this union is sacred in the eyes of God. Some may object, but love is above all." There were tears in Sammy's eyes. May walked down the aisle like an angel in her white wedding dress. But the shouting from outside turned that scene into a nightmare. Frank Sinatra stood next to Sammy and whispered, "Don't listen to them, Sammy. Just look at May." Sammy looked, and May smiled. That smile was worth everything. The rings were exchanged. The rabbi said, "You are now husband and wife," and Sammy kissed May. Applause rose, but the booing from outside was louder. When the chapel doors opened, police cordons kept the protesters away, but stones flew through the air. Someone threw a bottle at Sammy's limousine window. The glass shattered. Frank Sinatra yelled in anger, "Who the hell are these people?" But no one knew. They were just faces full of hate. May Britt was crying as she got into the limousine. Sammy hugged her and said, "May, I will protect you, I promise." But inside he knew he couldn't protect her from some things. No one could be protected from America's rage. The honeymoon was to be in Mexico, in a private villa in Acapulco overlooking the ocean and, most importantly, away from the protesters. The first 3 days were peaceful. Sammy and May walked on the beach, watched the sunset, and were truly alone for the first time. May sang a Swedish song to Sammy. Sammy sang "I've Gotta Be Me" to her, and those moments were perfect. But on the 4th day, a letter arrived. Federal Express marked urgent. When Sammy opened the package, the letter came from Hollywood, and the sender was Arthur Freed, the legendary producer of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Studios. The letter was short. "Sammy, your role in the film Porgy and Bess has been canceled. The studio made this decision after your marriage. I'm sorry." Sammy tore up the letter. May came up to him and asked, "What happened?" Sammy didn't answer, but the pain in his eyes told everything. Hollywood had closed its doors. When they returned from their honeymoon, Los Angeles was like a different city. The press followed them, but not to congratulate, but to look for a scandal. A journalist asked May, "Mrs. Davis, do you regret marrying a black man?" May didn't answer, but Sammy exploded, "This woman is my wife, and you have no right to humiliate her like that." Security guards had to calm Sammy down. That night, when they returned home, there was another package on their doorstep. This time it contained a dead mouse and a note, "This is your future, nigger." May vomited when she saw the package. Sammy called the police, but again the same answer, "Sorry, Mr. Davis, there's nothing we can do." Sammy hung up the phone and realized if the laws in America wouldn't protect his marriage, no one would. The first real attack happened in December. Sammy and May were having dinner at a restaurant in Beverly Hills, a luxurious place. 3 men walked towards their table. The leader, in his 40s, white and hate in his eyes. "Who do you think you are, nigger? How dare you come here with a white woman?" Sammy stood up. He was 5'3" tall but fearless. "This is my wife, and I am just as much a customer here as you are." The man threw a punch. Sammy dodged right, but the second man grabbed May's arm. May screamed. At that moment, the waiters intervened. The police were called, but the damage was done. May had a bruise on her arm, and Sammy's lip was split. The police took a report, but there were no arrests. "They'll sort it out among themselves," they said. That night, Sammy looked in the mirror and realized the cost of his marriage was not just his career, it was his life. As 1961 arrived, Kennedy was in the White House, but Sammy was not on the guest list. Frank Sinatra had organized the inauguration ceremony, but he hadn't invited Sammy. Political reasons, Sammy, you understand, right? Sammy didn't understand. Or he didn't want to understand. He watched Kennedy's oath on television, and he saw that Dean Martin was there, Peter Lawford was there, even Shirley MacLaine was there. But Sammy Davis Jr. was not. May held his hand and said, "Sammy, maybe it's better this way. You don't have to be with people who don't need you." But something inside Sammy had broken. He had fought for change, but change had excluded him. Good news came in February. May was pregnant. The doctor confirmed it, and Sammy hugged May in tears. May, we're going to have a family, a baby, our baby. May smiled, and for the first time in a long time, she was truly happy. But the happiness was short-lived. In March, a magazine headline read, "Mixed race baby on the way. What will it look like?" Sammy bought a copy of the magazine and tore it up. May, they're writing this about our child, about a baby, before she's even born. May cried, but she had made a decision. She would give birth to the child, and they would raise her in love, no matter what America said. Tracey Davis was born on July 5th at Cedars of Lebanon Hospital in Los Angeles, and the birth was protected by security guards. Sammy was next to May in the hospital room, and he cried when he first saw his baby. May, she's perfect, our daughter. The girl had light skin, May's blue eyes, and Sammy's smile. Journalists were camped outside the hospital, and Sammy had to make a statement. My daughter is a miracle, and I will love her forever. But as he made that statement, he saw faces full of hate in the crowd. Some applauded, but some cursed. America was divided, and Sammy's family was right in the middle of that division. The following year, their second daughter, Jeff Davis, was born. 2 daughters, a mother, a father, and from the outside, a normal family. But they were not normal. When Tracey and Jeff started school, the other children called them zebra children. The teachers remained silent because the parents complained mixed-race children shouldn't play with our children. Sammy had meetings with the school administration but found no solution. May considered homeschooling her children, but Sammy refused. May, if we hide or protect them, the racists win. Our girls will go out and challenge the world. But that challenge was too heavy for a child, and when Tracey was 6, she asked her mother, "Mom, why aren't we like the others?" May couldn't answer because the answer was too painful. By 1964, the Civil Rights Act was signed. Racial discrimination was outlawed and the country seemed to be changing. Sammy and May were hopeful. Maybe it would be easier now. Maybe the threats would stop, but they didn't. That same year, a man came on stage during Sammy's Las Vegas show and cursed him, "Nigger, leave your white wife." Security threw the man off the stage, but Sammy was in shock. Frank Sinatra came backstage and said, "Sammy, maybe you should leave May at home. Vegas is still not ready." But Sammy refused. "Frank, if my wife doesn't come with me, then I won't come either." Sinatra shook his head and left. Something changed after that moment. The dynamic within the Rat Pack was different. Sammy was no longer the fun little guy, he was a troublemaker and everyone knew it. In 1965, May Britt's career officially ended. No studio would hire her. Managers weren't calling. Being Sammy's wife had finished her in Hollywood. One day, May said to Sammy, "Sammy, I don't regret it. I love you, and I love our daughters. But sometimes I think if we hadn't married, maybe we would both be happier." Sammy's world collapsed when he heard those words. "May, please, what about the children? What about us?" May cried, but she didn't change her mind. "Sammy, the children are more unhappy with us. They live in fear every day. Maybe if we separate, it will be better for them." That night, Sammy left home, and he never came back. The divorce proceedings began in 1968, but the process dragged on. Lawyers tried to sort out financial matters, custody disputes, and the media put every detail on the front page. Newspapers sold with headlines like "America's most controversial marriage ends in divorce." Sammy defended May in interviews. "She's a wonderful woman, a wonderful mother. The mistake is mine." But May remained silent. She considered returning to Sweden, but her daughters were in America and she couldn't leave them. In December 1969, the court approved the divorce. After a 10-year marriage, 2 children, and countless threats, it was all over. As they left the courtroom, Sammy looked at May and May smiled at him. It was a sad smile, but forgiving. "Sammy, I never blamed you. I blamed the world." Sammy couldn't answer because he felt a knot in his throat. Post-divorce years and regrets. In the early 1970s, Sammy was lonely. He saw Tracey and Jeff once a week, but it wasn't enough. May was trying to build a new life, but Hollywood still didn't want her. She said in an interview, "Marrying Sammy was my choice and I don't regret it, but there was a price and I'm still paying that price." Sammy watched that interview when it aired and he cried. He realized what he had done to May, what he had done to his children, and most importantly, what he had done to himself. He had fought for love, but he had lost the war. America had won. In 1972, Sammy hugged Richard Nixon at the Republican convention. That photo of the hug went around the world, and Sammy was declared a traitor. But few knew that behind that hug was the rejection of the Kennedys. Sammy had taken his revenge, but the price was heavy. The black community excluded him, and May Britt watched from afar. She said to a friend, "Sammy is still in pain. The Nixon hug wasn't about love. It was about acceptance, and he was never accepted." In the mid-1970s, Sammy remarried Altavie Score, a young dancer, and this time a black woman. The press celebrated it. Sammy Davis Jr. finds love again, this time within his race. But that marriage wasn't happy either. Altavie's had addiction problems, Sammy did too, and they sank together. Tracey and Jeff didn't accept this marriage. They remained loyal to May, and they saw Altavie as someone who replaced their mother. Sammy realized this, but he couldn't change it. His relationship with his children cooled, and losing them hurt more than losing May. In the 1980s, Sammy financially collapsed. The IRS demanded $7 million in back taxes. His Beverly Hills home was foreclosed, and he couldn't even make alimony payments to May Britt. May didn't say anything during that period. She didn't go to court. She didn't pressure him. She said to a friend, "Sammy is already hurting enough. I won't add any more." That compassion hurt Sammy even more, because he knew he didn't deserve it. In 1989, Sammy was diagnosed with throat cancer. Terminal, no cure, and his voice was gone. When the doctor broke the news, Sammy only asked one thing: "How much time do I have?" "Maybe a year, maybe less." Sammy nodded, and the first thing he did was call May Britt. The phone rang, and May answered. "May, it's Sammy. I'm sick, very sick, and I need to talk to you." May didn't hesitate. "I'm coming, Sammy." A week later, she arrived at his Beverly Hills home. Sammy was thin, his voice was a whisper, but the same light was in his eyes. May sat down, and Sammy spoke. "May, I apologize for what I did to you. I loved you, but I couldn't protect you. I fought against America, but you became the battlefield, and that's my fault." May cried and held his hand. "Sammy, I never regretted it. I loved you, and that love was real. The rest belonged to the world, not to us." After that conversation, May visited a few more times. Tracey and Jeff also spent time with their father. Sammy wanted his family by his side in his final days, and May made that happen. Even Altavie thanked May. "You're good for Sammy. I couldn't do it, but you still do." May didn't answer, but she thought, "Because I still love him." Final performance and farewells. In March 1990, Sammy wanted to do one last performance. Doctors objected. "Mr. Davis, you have no voice and you might collapse on stage." But Sammy insisted, "I want to die on stage, not in a hospital bed." Harris Tahoe organized the show, and tickets sold out in an hour. Everyone knew this would be Sammy's farewell. On the night of March 25, 1990, the stage was full. Frank Sinatra was in the front row. Dean Martin was too ill to come but sent a card, and May Britt was there too, with her daughters in the back row silently. When Sammy came on stage, the applause lasted a minute, a standing ovation, and some people were crying. Sammy took the microphone, but no sound came out. Not even a whisper, just air. The orchestra conductor looked, Sammy nodded, and the music started. "Mr. Bojangles." Sammy couldn't sing, but he danced. His tap shoes kept the rhythm on the stage, and that rhythm was stronger than any vocal. He danced for 3 minutes, and then he stopped. He was breathless, and his chest heaved. Frank Sinatra stood up and applauded, and the entire audience did too. Sammy bowed, and the curtain closed. He collapsed backstage. An ambulance was waiting, and he was taken to Cedars-Sinai. May rushed to the hospital and held his hand. Sammy whispered, "May, did you see today? I can still do it." May smiled in tears. "Yes, Sammy, you can still do it." May 16th, 2 months later, on the morning of May 16, 1990, Sammy Davis Jr. passed away. At his Beverly Hills home, Altavie was by his side, but his last word was about May. "Tell May I'm sorry, and tell my children I love them." When the news spread around the world, Hollywood was in shock. Frank Sinatra cried. Dean Martin sent a message from his hospital bed, and May Britt quietly prepared her daughters. The funeral was to be at Forest Lawn Memorial Park, and the guest list was the who's who of Hollywood. When the funeral day arrived, the church was packed. In the front row was Altavis, in the second row May Britt and her daughters, in the third row Frank Sinatra, Liza Minnelli, Shirley MacLaine, in the back rows hundreds of fans, colleagues, and people whose lives Sammy had touched. Jesse Jackson gave the eulogy. Sammy Davis Jr. was not just an entertainer, he was a pioneer. He loved across the color line, and he paid the price for that love. Some people applauded, some cried, but some remained silent, because Jesse's words were true, but they were painful. Michael Jackson was in the front row crying uncontrollably. Sammy was his mentor, his dance teacher, and his inspiration. After the funeral, MJ told reporters, "Sammy didn't just teach me how to dance, he taught me how to survive, how to be a black artist in a white world and still shine." He was a legend. Before the coffin closed, Frank Sinatra placed a small object inside. No one saw what it was, but Tracey Davis revealed years later a Star of David necklace. My father was Jewish, and Frank never forgot that. Legacy in May Britt's silence. After the funeral, May Britt stayed away from the media. She refused interview requests, rejected book offers. She focused only on her daughters and protected Sammy's legacy. In the 2000s, Tracey Davis wrote a book, Sammy Davis Jr., My Father. The book mentions May. My mother never regretted it. She loved my father, and she fought for that love. America won, but my mother never surrendered. May cried when she read the book, but she was proud because her daughter had understood the truth. In 2016, May Britt gave a rare interview. She was 83 and had returned to Stockholm. In the interview, she was asked, "Do you regret your marriage to Sammy?" May smiled and replied, "Never. He was the love of my life. The price was heavy, yes, but love always demands heavy prices, and I was willing to pay it." The journalist asked, "Did America treat you and Sammy fairly?" May was silent, then said, "America is changing, slowly, very slowly, but Sammy and I were part of that change. Maybe we didn't win, but the path we marked helped others." Final thoughts and lasting impact. The marriage of Sammy Davis Jr. and May Britt was not just a love story. It was a story of two people fighting to love each other during the darkest period of race relations in America. Death threats, bomb packages, career-ending threats to children, all were real, and all happened despite their love. Today, interracial marriages are legal and normalized in America, but this normalcy came thanks to the prices paid by couples like Sammy and May. May Britt passed away in 2023 at the age of 100, at her home in Stockholm in peace, and her daughters were by her side. Her funeral was quiet, no press, no media, just family. But there was a small photo on the coffin, Sammy and May's wedding day photo. November 13th, night, protesters outside, love inside. That photo told everything. Two people, one love, and a world that was changing. Sammy's gravestone reads, "The entertainer, he did it his way." May's gravestone simply says, "She loved fearlessly." Two graves, two continents, but one story. They fought for love, and the fight wore them down, but it didn't defeat them. Because true love is never defeated, it just pays the price. And Sammy Davis Jr. and May Britt paid that price in the heaviest way, but without regret. This story teaches us love is not easy, especially if the world is against you, but true love fights, endures, and even if it pays the price, it doesn't look back. Sammy and May did just that, and their legacy continues to live on in the millions of couples who love freely today. Perhaps they lost the battle, but the result of the war was freedom, and that is the greatest victory.